And here we are, as dependable as an old person's bowels.
I don't know if old people's bowels are dependable.
Well, aren't
But
they
we
regular?
are here.
Aren't they regular?
I don't know. I'm not an old person.
Okay, well, we don't know yet. All right, it's me and Phumi Mashiko and you this morning. First thing to get your day started. And we're full of the joys of spring. I don't know why. I mean, I hardly slept last night, but I'm actually feeling fine. Don't know what I did. Something right, did something wrong. I'm not sure. Woke up at like 2:30 in the morning.
Oh,
And I just
my
looked
Lord.
around and went, oh no.
That is the worst because
terrible.
when you fall asleep again, you've just got the anxiety that you're gonna oversleep. You're gonna overshoot
Exactly.
it, right? So
Exactly.
then you never quite fully fall asleep. Ugh.
Very annoying. All right, so we are here to entertain and regale you with all kinds of fun stories this morning.
I must say though, that is the one thing I miss about lockdowns is
What?
just being untethered to the clock. Like you could sleep till 5:15 and still be in the studio.
Yeah, but the
At 6.
so yeah, that's true. But the fun thing about that ending is that you had to kind of do life again. A friend of mine, she's just started a job, or her job that she was already at. Sorry,
She
has
has
just
gone back to the office.
Yeah, they've insisted on 3 days at the office. Now she's a freelancer, so she thought it didn't apply to her. And then they came back to her and said, "Oh no, this very much applies to you."
Applies to everybody.
And she said, first of all, she's fattened out of her clothes. She says, so she has to find like work clothes because she's been working from home since before lockdown already. Okay, so this has been a
Because
while,
she's a freelancer.
right? So she thought, I don't need to buy work clothes, right? So she didn't bother with that. Then the first thing was the clothes. The second thing is she said the fuel is going to
It's
make a
gonna
major
kill her.
dent,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Even though it's 3 days a week. And she said, I realize like I shouldn't complain.
Yeah.
Some people have to do 5 days a week at the office or more.
Yeah.
So she knows she's still among the lucky.
Listen, the thing about so many things went apeshit, right, with the lockdown. But I posted on my Instagram last night shoes. Because
Why? What happened with shoes?
Heels.
This is a world I do not know anything about.
Because
Go on.
heels. So last week Friday, I was invited to a ladies' breakfast, lunch and supper.
Oh, right. Is it one of those?
One of those. Like amazing. I never learn. Every year I kind of have this idea that I'm gonna get back to the office by like 12. Never happens. And I took out like my favorite heels, which are my easy go-to heels. They're like the ones that you can dance in.
Comfortable.
Yeah.
They look good, but they also are very functional.
Like
it's where what is it they say? Form meets function.
Oh, Baba, let me tell you something. I don't know if it's the lockdown or the not wearing heels for a very long time or what it is.
Were you out of practice?
I put on the shoe and I was like, did a little walk around the bedroom and I felt the spasm. In a part of my calf.
Oh no.
So I took off the first pair of shoes and I thought, okay, so not this one. And I put on the second pair. Woo. Let's just say
were those a bit better?
No.
They were as bad.
Yeah, so I just wore flat shoes.
So it's not the shoes, it's you. It's you.
It's the lockdown. My point being that it's the lockdown. Because we're out of practice of the important things. Out of practice of wearing heels.
Well,
what the hell?
So this friend of mine, she's also a mom of, I don't know, she's got like a herd of children. Okay? Like a herd.
Really?
And she said that in this voice note, which she sent to all these other friends of hers, and she said, I'm sending this to you just to like let you in on like girl problems, because I think you need to know this, because you've been single for so long that you've forgotten about these things that women worry about. Her fattening out of clothes and stuff. We don't worry about that. I mean, like, but what I thought was interesting is she said she's actually going to go with the flow on this message from the universe that she has to get back into society, do work things. She was talking about her work wife, which I thought was funny too. So she's like got a friend at work who's her work wife, and she was bitching to her work wife about this new thing. The
It's
work
an
wife is
important thing.
the work wife is like, you know,
A work.
what is
Listen,
that?
A work wife.
So what is a work wife?
A work wife or work husband,
Yeah.
right? Is that person at the office
Mhm.
that is very close, where the relationship is so good and so deep and so intimate.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That this is the person you bitch to. You know how this is the person you gossip with. This is the person. This is like intimate.
Okay, so she has one of those.
Yeah, yeah.
So now-
Everybody
and
needs a
I-
work somebody.
Thank you for explaining. She didn't explain that to me. So much for her educating me. So this work wife said to her, you know what is a good thing is it'll force you to get back into things that you forget to do very quickly, like small talk, you know, coffee break conversations. In America, they call them the water cooler moments. But we don't really have water coolers. We have
Yes,
coffee
we do.
stations. Do we?
Yes. You see, Gareth, you see, the thing about working in a beautiful house like this, I don't the sun's
we
coming
can-
out,
we
so
can-
people are gonna see just out here right now, is that this isn't like corporate.
No, it must never be.
Thank God. This and so so you don't have things like water coolers and that, but also the water cooler thing, because we have such good tap water or have had such good tap water for so long.
Yeah.
We also don't need a different like standalone thing.
Yeah.
But water coolers are a thing. In most offices, water coolers are a thing.
Yeah,
Because you get
okay.
hot water
Again,
and cold
like
water out of that
like
thing.
the women's issues at work that I didn't understand. Clearly, corporate stuff in general, I'm way behind the clock on this one because again, I've so it's only when we have visits to clients of ours who work in these big buildings, you know, that I actually get to see it. And friends of mine who are like in law firms and I always find them a bit forbidding.
There are people who have water coolers at their homes. So at the
Really?
breakfast, there's also a raffle.
Sounds very sophisticated.
At the breakfast, there is also a raffle that you get tickets and all of that, and like lots of amazing prizes.
Right.
And there were 2 water coolers up for grabs, which I thought, if I didn't have a small house, I would have loved a water cooler in my house.
But you'd put it where, in the kitchen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, look, your
Thank
coffee has been served.
you.
There's Phumi with her Cliff Central mug.
Coffee.
Look at it. It's all branding everywhere. I like this picture of you. This is nice. You got the Cliff Central logo in the background there. This all looks very nice, Phumi. Very professional. And on the cup, you see.
Cliff
very,
Central
very professional.
books, Cliff Central.
Yeah.
I found a Cliff Central t-shirt that I was gonna wear today, but it's pink.
Oh,
do you remember?
I remember
those?
we did that for a Women's Day
Do you
event, didn't we?
remember those?
Yeah. We did.
I found it in my, and I thought I'm gonna, but it was.
We did
pink.
like a walk or
Today
a
wasn't the kind of
park
day
run
where I
or-
wear pink.
Didn't we do it? It was at Crawford and Lone Hill or something.
I don't know. I wasn't
Oh.
wearing. I was at a park run. I don't do those things.
Okay, well, no, I don't think we ran. We were just there. Please, you think I'm in a run? Oh wow. Okay, well, if you are one of those people like this friend of mine who suddenly has to be back in the office 3 days, 5 days, whatever it is, don't fight it. It might be a good thing.
Just go back.
Just go with it.
I loved, this. I was one of the first people that went back to the office as soon as I could.
Yeah.
Because I like being at the office. I like not being in my house all the time, so that I can enjoy my house.
Yes.
What was terrible about being in your house all the time is that it becomes everything. Now you're working here, now you're living here. No. I want to be at my house and I want to enjoy my house.
Yeah, I
wanna
know.
Cook and bake and watch TV.
But someone said to me the other day, like, you love your house, and I'm absolutely convinced that you keep it the way you want it, right? So it suits you. It's like, especially because your son is away so much of the time now, you can actually make your house yours.
But
so many people's kids ruin their houses. They get home and then they have to sort out the house after a long day's work, and they're like, "Oh, I hate this place."
No.
That's not you.
No, we love our house. It's just small enough. It's like that Diana Ross song. It's my house and I live here.
Yeah, I love my house too, so I don't mind any of that stuff. We still do a couple of shows a week from there, and it's become less and less, and I'm actually kind of pleased because there's an energy about being around people, and there are those people who just they can't cope with being isolated, physically isolated. You can do 1,000 Zoom calls. There's one friend of mine, she is married to a guy who plays international cricket, and they've got a little girl together. And she was saying on our friends group yesterday that it's difficult for their little girl because her dad is always on the screen because he's overseas playing at the moment. And she has to like Zoom call him or whatever it is twice a day. And it must be really difficult because it's almost like forced time. It's like a meeting. Yeah. Even though it's your kid and you're like, hey, how you doing? And she's a little baby. Well, not a baby. She's like 2 or whatever. But I think
that is a baby.
It's tough, right?
Oh, shame.
That's not easy. Like, I wouldn't know what
Listen, but you've got screen time. They've got like FaceTime now and all of that stuff. Remember when all you had was a voice on the other side of the line?
That's true.
But you know what I realized about the fact that so many people are still working from home?
Yeah.
This is part of what's wrong with South Africa's economy. We don't make stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we made stuff, people would be in factories, people would be, we don't make stuff. We write memos. We write memos and move stuff around on computers.
It's a big problem.
This is a problem. But I think it's a problem around the world, and it's a problem that China loves us to all have.
Yeah, well, they've pulled the rug out from under us. I don't think we can get it back if we try. So I don't know if you've got strong feelings about this, Phumi, but it became a major talking point when Stevel Mark was in on Tuesday. And there are new developments because I said that Jada Pinkett is the worst wife in the history of wives. Okay, she takes every opportunity to blast her husband, embarrass him publicly, talk about all the other men she slept with. She keeps on bringing up everybody else except him. And when she does bring him up...
It's not everybody else. It's just Tupac.
Well, and August, the daughter's friend who she was banging on the side. And Will was like, yeah, that's okay, honey. I'm like... Anyway, so Will Smith has released an official statement this week, which apparently is quite cheeky. He said... this is his official statement after his estranged wife, Jada Pinkett Smith, spoke of their 7-year separation. On his Instagram account, he posted a tongue-in-cheek video with the caption, official statement, but when played, it shows the actor saying, I've got something for you, my opinion on, and sneezes as it zooms out. So
and then it's that ultra zoom that almost goes out into the...
Well, what else?
I love Will Smith's Instagram. It's so fun. He's always like doing all of these fun things and jumping out of planes and off buildings and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
he really has.
It's not so much fun being married to Jada, though. I think it sounds like an absolute help.
Every single thing I know about the Smiths and their marriage is
from Jada.
But also, I did not seek it out. I don't want to know this.
It gets served up to you. Yeah,
like involuntary. All of this information in my mind. And listen, I don't know what they're doing. They've got a fucked up situation. They needed, like, their commentary is like Advocate Tifo. It's the commentary it's the commentary of their... And every single time, every single time, it's amazing to me. It's amazing to me that red tabletop, whatever.
That thing that she's on.
The thing the talk show that they had on, that she and the mom and the daughter had on Facebook.
The red flag is what I'd call it. The red flag show.
And they obviously, listen, give it to Jesus, y'all. Just let Jesus take the wheel.
I don't know. I sort of vacillate because on Tuesday I was saying I feel sorry for Will. Because I think here's this guy who is married to this utterly, utterly awful woman, as John says in the comments, an utterly awful woman, and I couldn't agree more. But he seems to be a weakling. Like he tolerates to the nth degree all of her bad behavior, all of her incessant diminution of his position in the marriage, her total and utter disrespect of him. And he just absorbs it all and thinks we aren't seeing the problem. Like, he can put up as many funny Instagrams as he likes, but we will not forget what he did on stage with Chris Rock. And we won't forget now that must have been a boiling over of the volcano inside of him when he's just tired of being punched publicly in the face by this dreadful person over and over again. The round red flag, that's what Sanena calls that show.
When I was a teenager, my best friend at the time, Yolanda, and I always used to have these conversations about the kind of person you should date.
Mm-hmm.
And that you must always date somebody that loves you more than you love them.
And how do you figure that? That's not so easy.
Well, Jada fucking has.
She found somebody who loves her more than she loves him. Yeah, well, she doesn't love him at all. I don't think she loves him at all. I think that's right.
He absolutely loves her.
No.
He absolutely loves her. He will do anything and everything for her, and this is what she's found. She's found that guy who, even as she is awful and says all of these terrible things about him, about the marriage, about the kids, about everything.
Well, they've ruined those children. That's another thing that you could tell straight away.
But because I read his book.
Yes.
And even in his book, there's a chapter where he talks about a birthday party he threw for her and how she reacted to it after having not wanted a big celebration. He threw a big celebration and then she was just in Mexico or something.
So she just gapped it while.
And she was just, when I read that,
person.
I thought, oh, this poor guy.
But then if you have the inability to make a good decision or a good choice, then you're stuck with it and it's all on you. I mean, he could just divorce her if he had any balls at all.
But he needs her.
Oh,
for whatever reason. He needs her. He needs her in his life. He needs all of that, whatever it is that he's going through.
Someone should take him aside and just give him a clap. Really.
This is what I'm saying. Between them and their therapist,
no,
they gotta give it to Jesus.
Imagine all the money. That therapist, you couldn't pay him enough. Or her. Rather give it to charity. There's no way you can help that marriage. That is an impossible task. I'll tell you what, you rebuild the Hanging Gardens of Babylon before you go and fix that marriage.
But can you imagine how much money they've made?
The therapist. Oh, plenty. And they're the kind of people who will keep paying you even if they don't pitch for the session.
Yeah, and
whoever that therapist
all these
is,
things, like it's done ayahuasca.
Oh yeah, they've done it all. Whatever they could, whatever gimmick was the thing. Cold plunges, they've done that together. They've probably done skydiving together. They've probably done sessions where they beat shit up together, like those rage rooms. I'm sure they've done all of that. None of it's helped.
He's done like these high performance coaches and he has done everything.
But is there anything more detestable? Because this is the position I'm coming around to now.
It's a mess.
You can hate Jada, and there are a lot of women like that, and unfortunately not the majority of women that I've encountered. And I mean, if I've encountered 3 in my life, it would be a lot. But you could tell from a mile away those kind of people, right? They're totally self-absorbed.
I don't know.
I think you could pick it up. How did he not pick it up? That's a question.
Here we are.
I don't know.
We all.
But here's the thing that's detestable to me. There is nothing more detestable than a spineless, weak male who allows everything to just happen to him and has no agency in his own life. There's nothing worse.
Any person, male or female, man or woman, I think it's terrible to be spineless. I think it's terrible to need so much external validation that you would take whether you are a man or a woman.
It is detestable, though. You agree with me on that?
I agree with you on that.
All right. Well, the other thing I wanted to talk to you about before we got to the burning platform today, which is today's show's already moving like a hurricane. Prince Simakade has had no legitimate claim to the Zulu throne, according to the courts. Now, we got to talk about this because there was a succession battle between Prince Simakade. I don't know how much attention you've been paying to this, but I would assume a fair amount. You're a news junkie. You watch this.
lot.
I saw a little bit about this. So this is what I've heard, right? Apparently, they went to the Pretoria High Court. Wednesday was the third and final day. He filed an application aiming to overturn the president's certification of Mr. Zulu as the Zulu king. through his legal representative, Ramaphosa said that Misuzulu satisfied all requirements needed for the president to recognize him as a traditional king. First of all, does this mean that traditional and customary law is now really on the back burner? No one cares. For you to go through a process like this, where you're just getting a politician to affirm the position of the cultural and traditional head of a South African community, a large community that has a long history, does this mean that for once and for all, we can dispense with this idea that we give anything but lip service to customary law?
You know, it's been extremely fascinating to watch. And, you know, a friend of mine actually works for Mrs. Zulu, and she's been around. She's been in Joburg because he's been around. He's had some events here in Joburg over the past couple of weeks. So she's been hanging out at the office with us quite a lot. And we have this conversation often with her. There are so many, and this is going to be a theme in this show because we're going to talk about Israel in the second hour. There are so many moving parts to this story, and all of them playing out because of so many motives, and so much money involved, right? Because if you consider that the prince Usmagate, somebody must be bankrolling all of these legal fights that he's got, because he could have had it. He could have had this fight at home internally through a process, a cultural process.
And frankly, you know, if being a king of a nation is anything worth its salt, then you shouldn't allow the courts to completely remove the authority to decide who that king is from the people who should be deciding if there's traditional and cultural law involved.
And
right.
And because we're living in this hybrid situation where there's a possibility to bring things to the court, even though they don't belong in that particular court, even though that is not the authority that it should be kind of taken through. But also because we have a government that has all of these overreaches.
Yeah.
All of these overreaches into all of these places. And also because they have access to a purse that they use to control various people
and it's
various
a bottomless pit when it comes to the courts, right? Because the government just pays for all kinds of things that probably they shouldn't, but because there are funds there, people will fight to the bitter end. And you see them appealing to this court, then appealing to the next, and eventually get to the Constitutional Court. And to my mind, if anything should have gone to the Constitutional Court, it's this, so that for once and for all, we can decide who has the right to decide who the Zulu king is. And if it's a small group of elders.
But if you consider that, what you see outside the court, and I didn't see a lot of this covered in...
Also, why in Pretoria? Is Maritzburg's High Court not sufficient? Like, surely there's a jurisdiction there.
They look, there should be, but you know,
I'm even more upset now after what you've said, because what you're telling me is that there is cynical money motives behind a lot of this.
Oh, the money, the biggest money motive is around who controls the Ngonyama Trust.
That's huge,
and all that land and all the mineral rights and all. So that is the biggest motive. And then if you consider that, and what I was about to say is that what we didn't see covered in a lot of the media is you did not see outside the court all of the various Damabuto who had come to support the king.
Yeah.
Because that is, they have all of the, you know, for them, all of the, if you take the legal term, conditions precedent were met when he was enthroned. All of the things that they needed to see, all of the parts of who makes this decision, where the person comes from, which royal household, which wife is the wife. that has the child that becomes the king.
Can I suggest
and.
can I humbly suggest to my Zulu brothers and sisters that you sort this out before the next king comes along? Yes. And then I heard some idiot on TV, because everyone's so woke these days. Some idiot TV news anchor is busy asking, like a professor of Zulu history or something, and when do you think it's finally going to become a thing where the Zulu queen can end up ascending the throne? And I'm like, well, it happens. We do have queens. So first of all, you sound stupid. Second of all, you're only saying that to try and like please your woke and feminist audience, because we are talking about a very patriarchal society here. And we're talking about a system of primogeniture often, or of some kind of dynastic cultural traditional history, which doesn't follow the rules of your woke left-wing East Coast American university like nonsense about a woman can be anything she wants to be. If you don't respect people's ability to have their own sovereignty over stuff like this, then you also mustn't complain about colonialism, because to me, there's nothing worse than the colonialism of the mind. And when someone like that TV anchor says to Zulu people, why haven't you got a queen anymore? No, I know, but this is how I'm seeing it.
No, I'm just saying.
Why haven't you got a queen? I mean, like, why don't women have a chance to participate in the succession battle? What she's trying to do is import her ideas into a system that has different ideas. And she wants hers to be recognized not only as equal, but as superior. Like, isn't that colonialism at the most obvious form?
And that's why I was saying to you that there are so many moving parts to a story like this. There are so many moving parts, and there are so many emotions. Woo. And then the money.
Yeah, well, I didn't even think about the money until you brought it up. So you really taught me something. And that makes it cynical and tacky.
Yeah.
And, I do like to think, maybe I'm just really naive. Maybe you've just proven that I'm naive. But I do like to think that the purpose of tradition and of identity in these situations, and for many people in this country, it is important that they are Zulu, or that they are Xhosa, or that they are, what? Yeah, sure. And I think it's great to be proud of that. It's also understanding where you come from. I'm big on that stuff. It's not a surprise to anyone who listens to this show. But part of me wants that to be a real thing, and wants it to be more important, more real, more grave in some way than tacky issues of money. But clearly, I'm living in a cloud cuckoo land.
Hey, when there is an entire TV channel, DSTV, that is dedicated to every facet of this kind of fight. Whether it's fighting about the house that the grandmother had, and this uncle and his wife, or it's fighting about the tubob some grandmother left for.
Yeah.
There is an entire, but the emotions linked to not just how we identify ourselves, but the things that we attach our importance of being.
Yeah.
Is there's so many
clearly that
emotions
news
to
anchor, it was so important for her as a woman. Now, when people talk like that, you know how irritated I get. I'm like, just stand on your own 2 feet. How about we just adjudicate what you're about to say based on what the content of what you're about to say is, and whether it's a persuasive argument. If you start a sentence with "as a woman," as I think she did in that particular case, after that, I go, stop listening, because I'm like, why should I take that differently or separately just because you've announced to everyone what we can clearly see on the screen? I mean, she's not some trans man.
I wondered,
well, maybe she is.
So what I did wonder about is
depends on which newsreader it was. I didn't look at her closely enough.
If Smagate and Miss
I've been saying it wrong, huh? Smagate. I said Simakadi, like a white person. Smagade. Okay,
do you think if the two of them were to like go full on Black Panther, if they fought it out
at a waterfall?
Yeah. We've got mountains in
that would
KwaZulu.
be fun. I mean, so that's a thing.
Fought it out, stick fights, which is like fought it out.
That's a thing that used to happen.
I think that would be so much cooler.
So during the Abbasid Arab Empire of about 700 to 1400 or so, maybe 1300. This is probably one of the largest and most successful empires of all time. It was what Europe called the Dark Ages, but in places like Baghdad, it was a thriving
age of enlightenment,
cosmopolitan, incredible society where you had philosophy and science and technology and, the most incredible developments in that part of the world.
Yeah.
And this empire, by the way, stretched from China to Belarus to the Balkans to Cairo and everything in between. Very sophisticated empire, some crazy emperors in there, some of whom were kept in cages. I mean, it's like a whole thing.
The whole idea of being an
sultans,
emperor,
but they used to
have crazy.
For sure. But the reason I brought this up, don't let me get into a long history lecture for you here, but the reason I brought this up is because these caliphs, these sultans, they eventually stopped doing this. But in the beginning, the idea was that the 1 or 2 or 3 contenders for the throne, all the male progeny of the former caliph or sultan, would actually fight. That was the idea. Of course, it became bureaucratized.
Yeah.
Suddenly you had people backing a certain candidate, and it was a lot more complicated. But
suddenly it had to be a legal battle with heads of arguments.
And technically, what you would do if you were the winning one is then execute all of your brothers. I mean, there was one sultan who, the day after he ascended the throne, 9 coffins were brought into the Hagia Sophia in Istanbul. And people were like, oh shit, I think I know what's just happened. Those are all his brothers. Gone. Finish. Then you don't have people going to court. You know what I mean?
You have seen the videos of the stick fights, right?
Yes.
In KZN.
Yes. I saw one with Gedlikis doing
those things are a proper skill, and they are that's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see them fight it out.
But with or without violence, actual violence.
Sticks. Listen.
With or without actual violence, are we calling for bloodshed?
Listen. Full on.
Okay. Full body contact.
Sticks in the the flesh.
Well,
old school. Stick on the flesh.
I think people would watch that. We should have that as a thing. That would make it super exciting when there's a new Zulu King. You'd be like, let's check this guy's strength out.
Just those two.
Wow. I wonder who would be up for that. Which of the two, if either? I don't think so.
I don't think they know how to.
No.
Either one of them. I don't think they know how to.
Okay, some people here are asking, someone says to the death. Well, you could do that too. I mean, that was always a thing. Again, in history, it always amazes me how the buzzards come out in the family when a loved one dies. It is like some wait for others to actually die. There are people like that. Yeah.
Shame, man.
Yes, Ospumi, let it be a fist fight, a stick fight, wrestling, judo. Whoever wins there, says Snipes. Men enjoy fighting with their sticks, says Alan. These politicians have been allowed far too long to do as they like. Well, we're not talking about politicians here, but I mean, you could call them politicians. In effect, the politicians now control them, even if they're not politicians.
Which is why Cyril Ramaphosa is all up in there, which is why he has to argue because, and that is also, why it took so long for them to agree to who is the, who's going to be the heir. And this was, I suppose, Mangosuthu's final act.
Yeah, because he wrote a letter.
He fought for it.
And apparently
hard.
that letter he wrote was the final undoing.
Fought hard for it.
Smakade.
He had all sorts of things. By that time, you know how old people can also be super spicy? Ooh, and he was spicy.
Yeah, and spiteful, it has to be said. Stick fighting in KZN, Musaku bare knuckle fighting in Limpopo. They're big sports in those areas.
Yay,
wow.
That bare knuckle fighting. I think it happens in like December.
Tell me?
Ooh, in Limpopo. In Toyando, in all of those vendor sections of Limpopo. Bare knuckle fighting.
I'm going to ask Jane about this. I'm sure she's got stories. Okay, so here's something interesting. Joking Atheist says, I say let them do a hot dog eating contest to determine who the next king is. Can you imagine that? That would be so funny.
Only Americans do that.
And
it's always the unlikely people that win those things.
This is interesting. Letsetja Kganyago, who's of course the governor of the Reserve Bank, has reaffirmed his policy stance on Tuesday, saying it remains focused, that's the Reserve Bank, on anchoring inflation at a midpoint of 3 to 6% target, but currency weakness, more debt, lower capital flows, less cooperation from fiscal authorities have made this difficult. So what he's warning us is we're going to raise interest rates soon. I don't think anyone wants that news this morning. So I'm sorry if it's hit you right between the eyes, but that's what we've got to do sometimes.
There's a lot happening in the news, ne?
Oh my God. And then SA is not running out of money, says the president. Speaking of the Reserve Bank, he says before Godongwana's budget cuts, he wants to calm everyone down. President Silili says South Africa is not running out of money. Recently, the Minister of Finance warned against revenue shortfalls and a possible budget cut. NEC received a report from our deployee minister. Why do they have to say that? It's like they're reinforcing the thing that South Africans really don't like about the ANC is this idea of cadred deployment, but they make it a thing. It's like Naledi Pandor taking calls from Hamas. I mean, someone just...
So did she take the call or did she make the call?
Apparently, she took the call. That's what I'm
Because this is also important. This Naledi Pandor Hamas phone call has been, I think, probably for the past day and a half, been on my mind, thinking, first of all, even in her statement, right, how she got played.
Absolutely.
How she got played.
Yeah, amateur.
And
this is amateur.
And this is like...
Diplomacy is thousands of years old.
Emotional politics, right? I kept asking myself, why, now that she took the call? First, because I wasn't clear if she took the call or she made the call. And so I kept asking myself, why would you call Hamas?
No, she apparently took the call. But even that, allowing yourself to be trapped in that situation is just so amateurish. It's like she's completely wrong-footed and caught off guard when she's supposed to be our international relations minister. I mean, remember the situation with Ukraine and Russia? Where she was saying one thing and then suddenly the president came out and said another thing and then she had to be reprimanded. I mean, diplomacy, as I was going to say, is 1,000 or more years old. I mean, more than that. People have been trying to negotiate their position in a world between states for ages. There are ways to do it that are tried and tested.
That's why we have marriages.
Tried and tested, right? Like there's a way to do it. And it's like she's come in here clunky and clumsy and totally directionless. Stupid. Anyway, the reason I brought that up is because deployee minister Enoch Godongwana, according to the presidency, has been talking about the position of the country. Deployee minister, that's what they say here. So the fiscal pressures that our country faces stem fundamentally.
Who wrote that?
Cyril's people. Because this comes straight from the presidency. The fiscal pressures that our country faces stem fundamentally from an economic challenge of slow and jobless growth. We can simplify that sentence for you because there's a lot of unnecessary verbiage.
Slow and jobless growth. There has been no growth.
There's no growth. There are no jobs. That's all. And a lot of that is the government's fault. A lot. COVID's response, the fact that they've mismanaged the economy, they're overspending. So yes, that is a problem. But let me translate from...
COVID gave them air cover, if you ask me.
Exactly. The president said these should not compromise service delivery areas. What service delivery? Someone in South Africa, I'm going to ask this as a bold, open question on a live show on Thursday, the 19th of October at 6:41 in the morning. Do you have any service delivery that's worth remarking on in this country? Do you have electricity all the time? Do you have water? Do You have rubbish collection, because I haven't for weeks.
That's a Pretoria problem. That's a Tshwane problem.
I'm just saying, for weeks, okay?
Oh, and an Ikurudleni problem.
Yeah,
okay.
There's a lot of problems.
Never mind.
What have they done in your area that has made you think, this is really good? And I'm thrilled with service delivery. This service delivery the president's talking about, we're not going to let this affect and compromise service delivery areas. Lies, lies, and damned lies. Fiscal discipline is not the same as imposing austerity measures that will undermine our developmental agenda. Again, let me translate for you. What he means is, don't worry, if you work for government, we'll still be paying you because we need your vote in the next year's election. Ramaphosa said the economy must grow and they need improvement in the energy sector. Improvement? How about just someone who knows what they're doing at Eskom would be a good start? How about someone who can run a company? That would be nice. How about no interference from the politicians? He says it's been struggling to supply stable power for years. And then he throws in as an afterthought the logistics sector. Like, oh, you mean all those trucks that are on the road every day because your rail system doesn't work? Yes. Again, whose fault's that, Cyril? I think it's yours. So, more excuses from the top. And not surprising. And poor old Enoch Godongwana, whether he's good or bad, has yet to be determined. But I think he's trying his best to make financial sense of essentially people who have access to the purse strings who should not, who couldn't even run their own personal finances properly. Anyway, so those are some of the news stories. At least you could say this morning that you woke up with stuff that you didn't know that we're hopefully giving you that is useful, that will inform you as you take to the day. And then the useless and unimpressive Competition Commission has launched a media and digital platforms market inquiry. These guys actually think the South African Competitions Commission has the temerity to imagine that they are going to make laws and rules around TikTok, Apple, Google, and Facebook. They're also roping in newer technologies like ChatGPT and other language models to draw from this content. They're basically saying that they're concerned that there may exist all kinds of marketing features in digital platforms that distribute news media content in associated markets that might restrict, distort, or impede competition. You don't say. Are we going to launch our own South African version of Facebook or TikTok or Google? Because I'm all for it. But
we'll just import WeChat.
Well, they tried that already, and that didn't work.
Yeah,
and there was private enterprises.
That's why. But remember, they're friends with the Chinese.
Yes, and of course
I'm sure they like.
They do. They're pushing this. They're pushing this hard. I mean, Fikile keeps saying things like, "Oh, the China model," right? They keep talking about this like it's a real thing. The difference between us and China. Do you want to explain that to them quickly in a sentence for me? What's the main difference between the ANC and the Chinese government? And it's not ideology, because we know they're more or less ideologically aligned. But what is it that will make China do things properly and us not? Want to venture a guess?
Oh, they are very good at implementation.
And just general competence?
They are very good at implementation.
And what happens if you
make decisions and they stick to the decision?
And one other thing, what happens if you don't get it right in China?
You disappear.
And what happens if you don't get it right here? They just give you another ministry to run into the ground.
They move you sideways.
So that's where they just don't understand it. Anyway, so they talked about media organizations that face prohibitively high costs to compete in the digital space. Oh, okay. So you're going to come and what are they going to give me money? Because I run a local media business and I'm up against Facebook and Google and all of those for advertising revenue. What, are the Competition Commission going to fly in like Superman and save me? I don't think so. I'm not betting on it.
What do they do at the Competition Commission?
Please.
Who is at the Competition Commission?
Supposedly.
There's so many questions. I have so
many questions. And
many
how much do they get paid to do?
I have so many questions about the Competition Commission.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke, who was it that we were talking to the other day about the Road Accident Fund?
Yeah.
So I found out that the guy who runs the Road Accident Fund is actually in the top 5 most well-paid people in the public sector. Like, he's in the top 5. That includes the president, the chief justice, the Speaker of the House, all of those people, right? And this guy is one of the best paid people. I wouldn't be surprised if the Competition Commission people are right in there too. Anyway, so this is again where, somebody has this imagination that it's possible for them to affect things like Google and Facebook and Apple and TikTok. I would love to sit in a meeting and see them sitting.
Has other.
That's the road accident fund guy.
There's something.
Colin Litswalo.
Collins. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I want you to see this quickly. This is way more fun than talking about politicians because we got to do that after 7 anyway. Look at this.
Guys, I think it's right time because we've been investigating doctors and nurses and teachers. I think now's the right time so that we can investigate those people from parliament. Guys, I'm so curious. I want to know, people from parliament, what do you have? The qualification. We want to see the qualification. The qualifications alone. Because now this thing, we are investigating people, and when Lunali, you always sleeping, and you earning a lot of money. We want to know, are you deserve to earn that lot of money? Actually, that's my question. Are you deserving that money now?
I sometimes think Jane is the voice of the people. She's like our vox populi,
I think people do think about these things.
They do, definitely.
What do you have?
Isn't she tying?
What do you have to be? What do you need to get to parliament? And do I have what it takes to get to parliament?
Well, think about it this way: if you want to build a bridge over a major river or over another road or whatever else it is, and you're not an engineer, there's no one who's going to give you permission to build that bridge. And people are going to be very trepidatious, to say the least, about using your bridge if you're not an engineer. Because it's likely, and we've had stories of this, where even engineers didn't do what they were meant to do. But normally, engineer, you wouldn't go and let Dr. Matthew operate on your heart. No? You wouldn't let someone who did not know what they were doing with plumbing and had no skills or certification as a plumber come into your house and start messing with the pipes.
Listen.
But what do you need as a politician? Zero.
There is a story, at the same time as the Dr. Matthew Lani story was breaking here in South Africa. I want to say maybe in Nigeria there is a story.
About the lawyer?
About the lawyer.
That was Kenya, yeah.
Is it Kenya?
So we covered it.
Who won?
He won 26 cases. Yeah, this came up on Tuesday. He won. Now, that is fantastic, but it shows you, that guy should immediately be allowed to write the bar exam. If he's already won against actual lawyers, 26 cases, we don't know how many he lost, of course. We don't know how many of those.
Yeah.
But still, how embarrassing for
the guys who lost to him.
That's right. So who has to get the punch in that situation? Who has to be beaten with a stick, as you put it with the Zulus earlier, is the people who he beat. How embarrassing for them. But as Ricky says, to go back to Jane's point, and lots of people, everyone agreeing with Jane this morning, only in South Africa can you go from Minister of Sport to Minister of Police to Minister of Transport to wherever Fikile is now, he's Secretary General of the ANC. Imagine being Minister of Transport, but you have no idea. Well, that's exactly the point. He doesn't. And I mean, I don't think a lot of our ministers have any specific knowledge about the portfolio that they're in. At all. It's purely like moving chairs around. It's musical chairs.
So do you think that the EFF is going to send Mkhwebane?
Well, that's what someone says in the comments. K&A says, I lost all hope when the EFF added the useless public protector, ex-public protector, as an MP in Parliament.
Have they? Have they added her as an MP? It can't be. They're about to, Parliament is about to close, and then
they might have done it. But imagine being that poor person who's been an MP on the bottom of their list.
No, you get bumped out.
And you get bumped out because a celebrity comes in.
And she even missed out on the bus test.
What's the bus test?
Don't you remember they all had to organize a bus full of people to come to the
yes.
And that's
she
when
didn't have to do that.
She missed that. She missed out on the bus test.
No, it's terrible. It's terrible. But I did think, funnily enough, when we were talking now, MPs.
Sanele says this guy didn't lose a case. He won 26 out of 26 cases.
This guy has a better record than Dalim Pofu, Barry Rue, and Harry Nell combined.
Yo.
So he's 26 for 0. Okay, that's impressive.
Wow.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
Wait.
Thank you, Sanele. See, there's always someone keeping us on our toes here. Just by the way, to go back to Naledi Pandor for just a second, I started laughing because someone sent me the clip of her or whatever talking about this situation in the Middle East. And I thought, all I could see in my head, I closed my eyes and I was like, Willie Madisha in Parliament going, hong, hong, hong. Do you remember that? And there's actually, if you go onto your phone and you look for a GIF, there's a GIF of hong, hong, hong from Willie Madisha. That must be, what, 10 years ago?
Was that?
So long ago. And there was Julius saying, if we've got a minister who's taking too much time speaking American English. Do you remember? No, I mean, Naledi Pandor doesn't sound American.
No, she does not.
Wow.
She does not.
This is what we've got.
Not
Hey?
after all the years she spent in the UK.
You get, ladies and gentlemen, you get the government you deserve. And if you're sitting at home and any of these stories, and they should, strike you as embarrassing, you are getting the government you deserve. So what you need to do is make sure that you acquit yourself with all of the tools at your disposal in this democratic South Africa. There are lots of them. It's not just the election. And you get out there and make a difference, because otherwise you'll get an even worse government next time around. Because haven't you noticed that they've become more and more complacent over the years? They've all become more and more entitled, lazy, shiftless. So you got yourself to blame if next year rolls around and you're not registered. Please, there's no more time for that excuse.
15 years ago.
Get registered and make sure that you vote in the election next year. I don't even care who you vote for, but vote.
Get registered,
Yeah.
volunteer,
Yeah.
get other people to register. Be there. Be part of the sweeping movement of change. I've said this before. If we
Often
how many people are currently liking and subscribing on the channel? How many people are tuned in? If we get each and every single one of us,
well, first of all,
3 people, convince 5 people,
we can make a dent.
We can make a difference.
And that's only the live. It's only the live audience. We've got many, 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 many more who are doing the podcast. So come on. And by the way, you lazy people who are not liking and subscribing, you are doing yourself no favor in gaining our respect. Not this morning. All right. Well, we have
Okay, I have one story to tell you, because this is a story that's been going on. That's a lot of talk has been happening in South Africa amid all of our power crisis around car power ship, right?
Yes.
Do you know a small country called Guinea-Bissau?
Yes, on the west coast of Africa.
On the west coast of
along
Africa.
the river.
And do you know what they don't have in their capital city right now?
What?
Electricity.
Why?
Because they get their electricity from the Turkish car power ship, and they currently owe them $15 million.
So they've just switched it off.
So they've cut them off.
Oh my God. How embarrassing. So there's a cautionary tale in that, don't you think?
This is be warned.
Oh man.
Be warned.
They've switched them off because they owe them money and they're not paying.
Yeah. They owe them $15 million, and so they have cut them off.
It boggles my mind, though, that a government doesn't realize, like, in terms of all the things you have to pay for, this should be right near the top. So if you are a government, if you are anything more than just a pretend government, you pay the people who are providing you with electricity. I mean, this is not 1500 where you can manage by candlelight. And, you still got horses and postal services where people pass a letter to people. Electricity is kind of important.
Electricity is important. But at the same time, we were just talking about the caliphates, kind of, and the amazing empires that they were able to build. And we still have today, if you go to Europe, if you go to Ethiopia, if you go, to some of the old countries where you see the amazing cathedrals that they were able to build without electricity.
Absolutely.
So
but that's
I'm just saying.
Nobody thinks that happened in Guinea-Bissau.
I'm just saying.
Just saying. Wait, I want to see who's in charge in Guinea-Bissau, because that's always interesting, right? Guinea-Bissau. I want to see, because sometimes you find some
Umaru Siseko Embalu.
Oh, wow. Umaru Sisoko Embalu. Okay, let me show you what he looks like. Sometimes you find these people and you're like, wow, that guy looks like he's been in charge for a very long time. He's 51. He is he's president at the moment and the current chair of the Economic Community of West African States. That's ECOWAS. Mm-hmm. And he has been president since February 2020. So not one of those ones who's been in office for thousands of years.
Guinea-Bissau is a small country.
Tiny.
They only have about 2 million people in their population. So it's a fairly stable fishing village.
It's tiny. It's a fishing village. There he is. That's the boss in Guinea-Bissau.
Very tiny fishing village.
Okay. Well, we've learned something this morning. You see, again, useful information that you might not have gathered and gleaned from other stuff.
With all the coups sweeping that ECOWAS region, he is safe.
For now. For now.
He's only been there for 3 years.
That's what I'm saying. For now. So we have the Burning Platform coming up next, and Kanthan is in. He's got lots of things to talk about. Israel, Palestine, the Ukraine, and all kinds of things related to that. We've also got Bafana Modise, who's coming in. He's a broadcaster. He's the activist for social justice. He's also former SRC president. He was and remains, head of communications at the South African Friends of Israel and the founder of Tsoga Mocha Youth Foundation.
Tsoga Mocha.
Mocha.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Tsoga.
Thank you. And this is what I'm also here to learn.
Wake up, young peasant.
There we go. Well, we need to wake up some young people, so we'll find out what Bafana has to say. That's all next. Don't go anywhere. cliffcentral.com. It is Thursday morning.
Up next in the Auto Trader podcast. I don't know what the outcome is. I don't think that every day, personally, this is my view. I don't think the consumer level car driving might be hydrogen. Definitely battery electric for the future of passenger vehicles.
Yeah, okay.
Hydrogen, I think, is more geared to the commercial environment. Trucking, maybe even down to double cab buckies and buckies.
Yeah.
Because Toyota has just revealed that they're thinking of the Hilux.
Yeah.
As a hydrogen option. Catch us every Monday at 9 a.m. on YouTube and on autotrader.co.za.
There's great benefit in intravenous therapy if you use it for the correct indication and if you use it safely, because things can go horribly wrong in the blink of an eye. This is why, walking into a store and picking something off a menu, you don't know what the protocol should be. You don't know whether this is really appropriate for you. If you want to do something like that, go to a medical practitioner address your concerns. This is what I'm feeling, blah, blah, blah. Because it might be something completely different, an underlying condition that you're not aware of. And yes, you know what, that practitioner can prescribe intravenous therapy for you, depending on your medical condition, your history, the medication that you're taking, and ultimately the diagnosis that you have.
That was the T Health Show, empowering you with knowledge. Download all previous episodes on your favorite podcast platform. The T Health Show is brought to you by T Clinic.
Right. It is time for the Burning Platform right here on cliffcentral.com. Thursday mornings, all the stories that are happening, the stories that affect you and me and the world. Oh, we've done we've done different hair arrangement during those 2 minutes.
New
Wow.
hair arrangement.
Look at you.
And I just realized, because somebody was rude here on the comments last week when I was
Why?
putting on lipstick
Why were
at
they
the
rude?
beginning. I don't know.
Don't they see
People are
women
just-
putting on lipstick? That's what women do.
Like putting on lipstick, I can feel my lips getting chapped.
Everything is so controversial these days. You can't even put on lipstick, huh, Pums? Wow. Okay. So you got a lot to talk about this morning. There is so much going on. Let me, because we're getting Kanthan and Bafana Modise in this morning, but let me ask you, because we haven't really spoken, and last week we had so much.
Last week was one of my favorite shows ever.
You enjoyed it?
I did. One of my favorite shows ever. But because last week was still so raw, I think. Last week was still, at least for me, completely in shock around everything that was happening with Israel.
Yes.
And we spoke about this, and I said to you, a week prior to that, nobody could have
I've seen
ever
it.
foreseen this. Although now that I've had the week to kind of calm down and think on it, I think they probably did. But this is the problem when you have a government that is so distracted.
You're talking about Israel now.
Israel.
Yeah.
They've been so distracted with all of Netanyahu's shenanigans
And
that they were not
reform
paying
of the
attention.
justice system, and there were protests all over Israel, and there was a lot
Protests
going
every
on.
other day.
Yeah, people were talking about how fractious the internal politics of Israel are at the moment. And I mean, this is something this is not even a controversial thing to say, because every Israeli will tell you that that's the truth. In fact, in some ways, and it's horrible to think about this, but politicians, like in this case Netanyahu, who I don't particularly have a problem with, a lot of people do, they love, I mean, he doesn't love the fact that people died, obviously, unless he's a complete psychopath, but they like these crises because it gives people pause to support and get behind the nation, etc., at a time where the internal
Although I don't think
differences
it's
are put
going to
aside.
save him.
You don't think so?
I don't think this is good. This is not like Margaret Thatcher's Balkan crisis, right? This is not going to save him, because I think this is going to go on for a long time. There is so much bloodshed, and we are watching this war. I think this is like the first time really that we're watching this war in an age of social media in the way that it is.
Well, you could argue that for
It-
Afghanistan and Iraq. You
Yeah,
could
but it
argue
was
that
not.
for
Afghanistan and Iraq was not the way that
Russia,
this is,
Ukraine.
not the way that this is playing out. You know, the way that this is playing out is, so if you think about what's happened in the last 48 hours with the hospital.
Oh, wow. That's a whole story on its own.
If you think about what's happened in the last 48 hours with the hospital, where there is so much disinformation
Right.
and there is so much chaos that almost on a not even an hourly basis, almost
Minute by
every
minute.
20 minutes,
Mhm.
there is a new breaking story. There is
Yeah.
on the ground footage. There is, and we're
And
in
there
a
are
space-
lies. There are big propaganda lies that are happening.
big lies. So what we know for sure right now is we cannot trust anything coming out of Hamas, and we cannot trust anything coming out of the IDF, because at the moment you're not sure, so
Well, let's just explain to people what happened with that hospital, because it's an interesting story. So initially, the story was And the AP reported it directly from Hamas. They said, oh, a hospital has been shelled and bombed by the IDF. 500 people are dead. That's what we heard. And everyone goes, oh my God. Because obviously, no one's going, yay, civilians are dead. No one.
A hospital. This is where people,
Unless you're a monster. So initially, and you had people all over social media then using this as like, you see Israel are just absolute war criminals, blah, 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 blah. Give it a bit of time. Then it starts becoming about how, no, this is one of Hamas's own rockets.
This was an internal rocket that misfired, a rocket coming from Hamas towards Israel. It misfired and it hit the hospital.
And
so
by
it
the
wasn't
way,
a direct hit.
By the way, a fair percentage of the missiles that are fired out of Gaza land in Gaza. This is something not a lot of people are keen to talk about, but it happens. And for Hamas, it's like, casualties are casualties, right? Anyway, changes again just a little while later, and it turns out not to have been a hospital at all, but an abandoned parking lot. Now, there may have still been people hurt. There may have still been people killed. I don't like the idea of us talking about how many were killed, because I think that that's quite pointless. One death is too many if it's an innocent civilian. But then
the fake news footage, right? So this is Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera were actually on the ground filming at the time, and when you look at this, then you have the IDF. This is the trajectory of all of the rockets over that period of time in this. Then all of it from minute to minute.
Are you trying to ape our president and are you trying to upset everybody here?
Kanthan is getting his props ready.
Kanthan has a yarmulke and a keffiyeh on. What are you trying to say? What is this?
It's a Palestinian scarf. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, you got a keffiyeh and a yarmulke.
Absolutely.
Are you just trying to upset everyone at once?
No, I'm actually trying to show solidarity with both sides of this conflict, which I think...
Are you able to, or is that moral equivalence, Bafana? Let's find out. We got so much to talk about here.
Yeah, I think you have to just decide which one are you on, or you want to be solidarity with both of them.
No, I'm absolutely in solidarity with people on the ground on both sides.
Okay.
I have complete contempt for the utter fuckheads who are running the overall strategy on both sides of this conflict. And I think that that's a good starting point for us to have. Could you ask the comment section whether I can take off my glasses now?
Yes, you can take off your glasses.
Right, okay.
Thank you, Captain. All right, so there we go. Controversial start to the burning platform, but what did you expect? I mean, did you really think it was going to be easy pickings this morning? So we got a full lineup. Let's just introduce everybody. So Bafana, first of all, Phumi corrected my pronunciation of Tsoga Mocha.
Yes,
okay,
Mocha.
Because it's not pronounced like Mocha. I could have told you that.
I'm sorry. I just immediately see that.
Mocha,
I immediately see that.
No, he didn't say Mocha.
Yeah.
He did not.
What did it say? Tsoga Mocha.
No, he did not say
All right.
Mocha, guys.
Okay, don't get distracted. We actually have real things
we
to talk about.
We have work to do here.
Just by the way,
arriving
so
late and causing all of this chaos.
I had Penwell Malatji in the studio yesterday, and I said to him, why is it that South Africa, and we've just proven we are not above this. South Africa is so easily distracted, right? While this whole thing in the Middle East is happening, people are talking about Dr. Matthew and Jada Pinkett, and we've fallen into that trap too on this show. So we're no better.
It's not just South Africans, man. It's how our brains work. Our brains, when things are too difficult, our brains try and
it's one thing to have a doctor.
It's
not to have a doctor who's not even qualified, but to have a Department of Health endorsing that kind of a doctor, that was kind of worrying. A whole Department of Health actually saying our brain is shining star, only to find out that the man's not even a doctor. Yeah, South Africa.
Right, so Bafana is a broadcaster and activist for social justice, a former SRC president. You were in ANC then?
Yes. I was leading SASCO by then. Yes.
But you have reformed.
I've seen the light.
And you are head of communications at the South African Friends of Israel. What is the South African Friends of Israel?
South African Friends of Israel is a movement of South Africans who are totally opposed to the ANC stands on this conflict. We believe that a two-state solution is the only solution. And I don't think that choosing sides and actually imposing your ideological position on the majority of South Africans is the right way to go about it. I think you should rather be, as one thing about Nelson Mandela, he had a relationship with both sides, and he chose a diplomatic position for both Palestine and Israel. So ANC lately has been more Palestinian and anti-Israel, and they are literally like just yesterday.
You could even you can even argue rather that Naledi Pandor is pro-Hamas.
Dude, he called Hamas. How do you call a terrorist organization? It's appalling. So clearly we are moving to South Africans.
So this is interesting because surely the starting point towards ending a conflict is to actually have an open channel of communication.
True.
So you're saying that it's wrong for Naledi Pandor, who has put forward a statement that actually says that there needs to be a peaceful resolution to this conflict, and that South Africa is willing to act as an honest broker. How does South Africa do that if they don't have an open channel of communication?
But how do you do that when you've already said, I'm taking this side? You can't call
it. Listen, I'm actually disagreeing.
He could have called. She could have called.
Disagreeing.
She could have called the PA. She could have called the Palestinian Authority or Mahmoud Abbas as a minister, not a terrorist organization.
No, but the perps in this case is Hamas.
No, but
they are the perps. Okay, let's agree.
It's a terrorist organization.
Okay. Hamas is a terrorist organization.
True, we agree on that.
Okay.
So what is the whole minister doing calling a terrorist organization then?
Because how do you open a channel of communication? Because it's not the Palestinian Authority that's firing these rockets in this particular case. But it's Hamas.
True.
So how can you call the Palestinian Authority and tell Hamas to stop this? No, actually, Hamas has contempt for the Palestinian Authority.
But by the mere fact that, listen, this is not new. Last year here, we had a Hamas leader right in the ANC conference here in Nasrec. So they have had this TNT meetings with Hamas for a very long time. And that is not in any way towards building or making yourself a partner to broker peace between these two people. You are literally chosen between the Israelis and the Palestinians.
No, it's not Israel and the Palestinians. It's Israel and Hamas, because Hamas are the perps.
You're not getting my point. There is a PA. There is a PA. There is a government of the Hamas of Palestine.
Brokering peace for the PA is not going to end up with doing anything.
Or rather, engage with Qatar.
But this is the thing that we were talking about, Gareth, earlier, where I said to you that there are so many interests in this conflict that it is difficult to really be able to take a bird's eye view of it and say, this is how the conflict is going to be solved, because there are so many moving parts and so many interests and so many different motivations. So if you consider that Hamas's motivation, backed by Iran, is to destroy Israel, right?
I think it's even simpler than that. It's not so much about destroying Israel, because the incursions and the violence and the civilian deaths that we saw on Saturday, just a week ago, let's not forget, were not aimed at territorial expansion or at damaging infrastructure. It was about killing Jews. That's what it was.
That's it.
They didn't, hang on a second, they didn't only kill Jews, okay? They killed Israeli Arabs as well.
They killed international people from 50 countries.
This was indiscriminate slaughter. Yes, their stated objective was to kill Jews, but
when someone says that's what they are,
it was absolutely indiscriminate. Yeah,
I just think so. Kanthan, I mean, you're a big gun guy, and you believe in being able to defend your property.
Yes,
I think if someone walks into my house because they've got some beef with me over, I don't know, mineral rights, or I dumped a wheelbarrow load of stuff on their side, or I've got in the way of their servitude, or whatever their gripe is with me. Someone walks into my house and murders a child of mine, or tries to kidnap my wife, or does kidnap my wife. I think I'm entitled to be just a little more than slightly pissed off and take whatever action.
Well, I think whether or not you're entitled to it doesn't matter. I know what I would do in that situation.
What would you do?
I would get medieval on their asses.
Right. That's what happens now.
To quote Pulp Fiction. But you see, the problem is that when we live in the moment at that level, so let's agree on this concept, okay? You're coming into my house and you're targeting my family.
I'm provoked.
Yeah. But the fundamental problem that we're dealing with in this conflict is the question of the fact that the person who's coming in and saying that you've stolen my house all these years ago and I want it back.
But
So,
then,
so no,
but
no.
then,
So, wait. Let
Let's talk
me
about Gaza. Hamas is in Gaza, right? Israel left Gaza 2005.
No,
So
let me finish this.
am I
point.
still
Okay.
taking? Am I still taking your land when I've left it? Just like they say, not keep your land.
So
This is my.
I'm
This is your
going to ask you
territory.
guys a question. All of you present here right
Yes.
now. Okay. What are the borders of Israel?
What
Well,
are the
they've
borders of
shifted a
Israel?
lot
They've
since,
shifted a lot.
No. What are the borders of Israel?
Since the 40s. What do you mean?
What is your question,
easy.
per
I
se?
mean,
Well, my question is: are there borders for Israel?
yes.
Yes,
So
No, they're not.
on the west,
No,
is
no.
the Mediterranean's a fairly safe border for
No,
Israel.
no, there are no borders of Israel. And I'll tell you why there are no borders of Israel. Okay. The only purported borders in terms of the Israel conflict goes back to 1949 when there was an armistice. Okay. Now, an armistice is basically an agreement to cease hostilities. And there was a green line that was drawn
Yes.
that demarcated beyond which conflict should not take place.
True.
There has never been a formal border that has been drawn up.
But
No, wait.
No, I hear
You see,
what
the
you
reason
say.
why
No, let him
this
finish.
is no, you see, the
Okay,
reason why
don't
this
worry,
is,
I'll give you time.
you see, the reason why this is crucial, okay, and understand that to a large extent, I'm a friend of Israel as well. So keep that at the back of your mind.
Yes, for those who've just tuned in, he's wearing a keffiyeh, but he's also got a yarmulke under those headphones.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
So when you have, and it's exactly the
Kippa.
same scenario that we have in between North Korea and South Korea. There isn't a border, okay? From the
but
point of view of what,
Kanthan, how much of this is technical and semantic?
it's not technical and semantic at the point at which you try and say there needs to be peace in this place, but you can't have an agreement on what the basis is of what the peace should be. And until we can get some sort of global agreement around this stuff, this is going to be an ongoing conflict between the children of Abraham who are tracing this conflict back to the fact in terms of whether Abraham wanted to sacrifice his firstborn son or whether he wanted to
Isaac or
sacrifice
Ishmael.
his legal son. And no one is stopping to ask, why the fuck did Abraham not sacrifice himself instead? Which is the crucial question.
Or as Hitchens says, isn't that the beginning of immorality rather than monotheism?
Exactly.
All right. Before we get
So,
we get
Bafana,
into the
all yours.
reads, because there's a lot here. I want Bafana to have a chance to reply to you because you put a lot out there, and I want us to try and keep this tidy so that by the end of it, we emerge with some better understanding rather than another source of conflict, another example. And I don't mean this in any way disparagingly to any of you, but I'm just so tired of seeing another fight on TV between a pro-Palestinian and an Israeli having an argument about land, for example, which reminds me in a haunting sort of way of some of the things that go on here when it comes to land. And they're not.
It's an absolutely fair comparison, Gareth.
I think it is a fair
Yes.
comparison because there's a lot of confusion around the legal entitlement to land, the historical attachment to land, whether land gives people dignity. There's a lot of stuff that we've still got to deal with in this country. Maybe in some ways we have, but that they are dealing with in a very similar fashion over there. So Bafana, first things first, you get to reply to Kanthan. He made a lot of points there. Where do you want to start?
Okay, I would love to start with this part. In 1949, as you said, there was a green line, right? And from 1948, from 49 until 67, Egypt controlled Gaza. Jordan controlled the West Bank.
West Bank.
They didn't create a Palestinian state. And there was no even a push to create a Palestinian state.
100%, yes.
Rather, what they did afterwards, after 19 years in power in those territories, they still wanted to attack. So I don't know whether the war is about the land itself or it's about the Jewish presence in the land. And that's why most Jews are convinced that, you know what, we are not fighting a war of territory here. We are fighting a war where our neighbors, before they have united against us to unleash war on us. Second time in 67, 73, you can count all those years where
I'm
Arab
100%
states,
in agreement with you
right?
on everything so far.
Yes. So the question then becomes to say, maybe the issue is not about land. Maybe the issue is about radicalism, religious extremists, religious radicalism to a point where some, even now Hamas,
Again,
when they attacked Israel, now they said they were going to liberate Al-Aqsa. was not even about land or rights or civil rights. It was more about we are going to liberate Al-Aqsa Mosque. So we cannot just reduce this battle to a mere land or to a human rights issue. There is you cannot have Iran clapping hands in Tehran over what is happening in Israel. I think
But you've had the U.S. clapping hands over what's been happening in Israel for how many years?
I mean, that's not the point.
I understand we're 100% in agreement on everything that you've said so far.
True.
So my point of departure, very simply, guys, okay, is how do we fix this?
Because before we get to that, because
because we're going into who's right and who's wrong.
But we have tried this before. Remember, in 2008, when Ehud el-Olmert said, "You know what? I'll give 90% of the West Bank back to the Palestinians. Is Jerusalem will be the capital of the new Palestinian state?" What happened? Maybe you can indicate me on that.
Yeah,
so
we can
actually
talk
given
about,
what they've been fighting for all these years.
So the Palestinians had
said
elections.
No.
Okay, the Palestinians had elections. The Palestinian Authority,
this is back in 2005.
Yeah,
yes.
Won on the West Bank, but Hamas had a plurality in Gaza. Okay, Hamas had 42% of the vote in Gaza.
Yes.
All right. Hamas then effectively took power in Gaza and proceeded to slaughter all of their opponents, their political opponents. Okay, which is what terrorist groups do. Can we agree on this?
Absolutely.
Okay?
And that's why you shouldn't call them.
Right. So now we've got this fractured situation where you've got Gaza, which is ruled by Hamas effectively, and you have the West Bank, which kind of just like sits there and, every so often kind of raises its head in feeble protest. But the West Bank, the PLO, has always been this fundamentally corrupt organization in much the same way that the ANC is a corrupt organization today. So
I surmise that's one of the reasons they're friends.
Yeah. So
it makes sense.
Well, consider that there were Palestinians that I actually had very close interaction with. So the late Edward Said, for example, wrote a seminal work called Orientalism. And, I really recommend that people go and look for this book and read it. I first met Said back in the day in the US, and I maintained contact with him up until the time of his death. And he parted ways with the PLO because of their corruption. So these are the two pieces of the puzzle that we've got.
And while you're on that, it's worth also mentioning that Hamas has done absolutely nothing to improve the condition of any single citizen except the leadership themselves, who happily are ensconced in, where is it, Qatar?
In Qatar right now, in the five-star hotel.
So every time, and Israel's been responsible for supplying water and electricity largely. I mean, listen, Gaza is an isolated strip with no real ability to, no porous borders anywhere, right? So people often talk on the Palestinian side about, in inverted commas, an open air prison and all of this stuff. And there may be some veracity to that. There may be some questions we could talk about the way people live there. But Hamas, as the government there, have not made a single effort to improve the lives of their own people, to build any infrastructure. Every cent that they seem to get.
Oh, no, they've built infrastructure, but it's infrastructure.
Terrorist infrastructure.
Yes, it's
tunnels,
infrastructure.
Missiles.
Missiles. I mean, their production hospitals. Systems out there are absolutely superb.
So Hamas has by no means been an exemplary government. And they say in the most recent research that they've done that between 50 and 57% of the people in Gaza support Hamas. Now, many of them would do that at gunpoint because what do you say if you live in Gaza?
But also I think there is there's also an indoctrination that comes around it, right?
Yeah, but we all get indoctrinated.
Yes, my point exactly.
There's something particularly slimy about like teaching kids in school that Jews are
my point
apes
exactly. The Jews are apes
and monkeys,
sons of the devil,
and pigs.
they drink blood of whatever.
I grew up during the apartheid era. We had Swart Khafar, put into our heads all the time. We had Roy Khafar put into our heads all the time.
Yes.
Indoctrination is what every single country does. And I think what we should avoid doing is get down to is to deny agency to the Palestinian people. We can take the view that they
No,
support Hamas, and that's okay. Whether they indoctrinated or
But
not,
the
doesn't
question
matter.
is, do we want to solve it, and what does solving it look like?
Well, that brings us to
right.
That brings me to the question, and go for it. Tell us
So-
how we solve it.
No, I mean it's very clear. We've been talking about the two-state solution for a
Okay,
very
a
long
two-state
time right
solution
now,
with
right?
what borders?
Right. No, they can decide amongst themselves to say from
Who?
this point to this point, Israelis and Palestinians. They
Yeah,
can
but
decide.
then you need to negotiate with Hamas, which is the starting point of
No,
our conversation.
but you don't
and
negotiate
Hamas
with
don't want to
terrorists.
negotiate.
You don't negotiate
Thank
with
you,
terrorists.
Gareth. That's
Okay,
exactly the
so
point.
stop.
But
Yeah.
more
Because
than
That's
that,
exactly
though.
the point.
So can I just jump in and say
Oh, thank
what
God
this
for me,
conflict
yes.
has also taught us all,
Yes.
what it's shown us all, is that there are no adults in the room here. So you talk
Are
about
you just talking about this room or that room as well?
I'm the adult in this room. But the reality is that what we also don't have is we also don't have on a world scale, on a global scale, anybody who is able to pick up the phone and have a conversation on either side.
Yes, we do.
Whichever side it
Putin
is.
has done that.
Really?
Uh-oh.
Yeah, Putin has done that.
Hold on. Can I
And
just say,
everyone says, all right.
you spoke earlier about Madiba and being
Yes, yes.
because that's who he was. We do not currently have an elder statesman, whether it is in the UN or the US or South Africa or even Russia,
True.
who is able to bring all sides, and there are not two sides here. There are multiple sides. Whether you're talking about why Egypt is not allowing civilians into Egypt, out of the danger zone
It's
into
because
Egypt.
they know that Hamas are crazy guys who actually going to start fomenting insurrection within
Because is
within
Hamas
Egypt, and for the same reason that Jordan will not allow Palestinians into Jordan,
So you don't
because they
think
tried to assassinate.
you don't think it
King
would make
Abdullah.
you don't think it would make sense that then both states around there unite against Hamas and get rid of it?
They won't, though.
They won't.
But it wouldn't make sense. Though.
It would if in an ideal world.
In an ideal
And
world,
if your
to say,
aunt had balls, she would have been your uncle.
Yeah. Because the problem that I find with this, right, is that Hamas is the main obstacle. They used to say settlements is the main obstacle to peace, but Hamas is the main obstacle to peace right now. Because if we don't have anyone willing to engage and anyone saying, you know what, we are the representative of the Palestinian people, and we would love to see peace in this view. And how can we work around it? Maybe we are looking at something. Saudi Arabia maybe could have been a good broker. It seems like it's a big brother, but certainly Hamas is a friend of Iran.
Well, that's another meta narrative.
Right.
That, you know. No, this is good because
yes.
what happened there is that essentially Saudi Arabia and Israel were getting to a point where they would have been normalizing, in inverted commas, relations. It was a big threat to Iran. Iran was like, if we're going to press the button, it might as well be now. Hamas going to do this. And what about this theory?
Sure.
What about the theory that all of this that has happened was actually unintended? Like, let's just for a minute assume that Hamas was given support and the green light by Iran, but for a small thing to happen because they assumed Israeli countermeasures would be so successful that they wouldn't get as far as they did. Let's imagine for a second that, let's say that this was more wildly successful than Hamas had imagined it could be. That they were guessing maybe they'd be able to like make some holes in the fence, get a little way in, and the Israelis.
But Gareth, I'm disputing that fundamental thing, and you see the reason why I'm disputing it. Okay, for the longest time in the world, we've had this idea of U.S. exceptionalism and Israeli exceptionalism in military terms, and that's because of the fact that for the longest time they've been able to substantially outgun everyone, and the carpet bombing strategy has been highly effective. Now, let's use for example the question of the Iron Dome. The Iron Dome is a fabulous piece of technology, and I've written about it. I've sung its praises. The Iron Dome has a 99% accuracy, in terms of taking out enemy missiles. So that means if you have 100 incoming missiles, one of them is going to get through.
Sure.
When you have a situation where Hamas is firing 6,000 rockets simultaneously, there is no way. Okay, so the concept of Hamas, unexpectedly stumbling. No, this was planned. And again, it was
planned, but
don't focus on Israeli exceptionalism. Israel was caught flat-footed. They didn't take the lessons that were learned in Ukraine, where Russia did exactly the same thing. All of the American missile defense systems, the Patriots and so forth, they just swarmed them with very small drones. And at the point at which you're able to see then where the firing is coming from, you then target that missile defense system and take it out. And that is going to be the new warfare strategy around the world going forward.
Okay.
I mean,
So now this comes back to my question, all right? And the strategy has worked very well for Israel up until now.
what the
Okay.
Iron Dome system?
No, not the Iron Dome system, that whenever Hamas gets too far out of line, you just go in and
What they say,
and
mow the lawn.
mow the lawn, as they put it, and then
Mm.
you effectively disable them for a period.
Mm.
But what's been happening over the longest time now, okay, is that the technology has been moving, not exponentially, geometrically. So you've now got the ability of Hamas itself to produce drone capacity on the ground at a significantly faster rate than Israel can put in Iron Dome defense systems. Because remember, each of those missiles that the Iron Dome defense system fires costs $150,000 each of them single-handedly.
Sure.
And you have to now face that off against the fact that Hamas is turning out drones that are effectively costing hundreds of dollars, not thousands of dollars, hundreds of dollars. So the reason why I keep coming back to the question is of what is the solution? Because if we're not recognizing the path that the technology is currently taking, then Israel is toast, just simply because of the sheer volume of incoming missiles that Israel will not be able to keep up with, unless they end up resorting to nukes, and then we've got World War III.
Not really. I think maybe just to agree with you on the idea that this was planned. It was not just they got the Jews.
They said 2 years they've been
yes, like in 73 when they attacked on Yom Kippur, right? It was the Jewish holiday, and nobody thought that there would be war anytime soon. Just like now, there's a feast of the Tabernacles.
Simchat Torah.
Yes, Simchat Torah. And then right there, where Jews were celebrating, young boys and girls were dancing in clubs, and overnight they were abducted somewhere. Some are still held hostage in Gaza. So this was well planned to say we attack with missiles and rockets, and you're gonna go in and take what is that community? Olifakim, the village there that was completely destroyed, babies burnt up, and all of that. So for me, I tend to think that Israel still has. I think now they've learned from this, but I think the military capability of the Israeli state is very much strong. I don't think that Hamas will ever.
And that's the point I disagree with.
We will see about
And you see the reason.
It's okay.
Phumi, what do you want to throw in here? Because you've been sitting there, and I'm sure you have some things to add.
Phumi is the Busisiwe Mkhwebane of this conversation.
Don't insult her.
Go for it.
Fighter. Fighter.
This is the thing about this conversation.
Is
For me,
related.
and as you rightly said, Gareth, is all that we've been seeing everywhere. Is we're just seeing these counter offenses, and without looking at a broader and more nuanced conversation that says there are more interests on the ground than what we're all looking at. We're kind of looking Palestine, Israel, or Israel, Iran and Israel, or even, Qatar, Egypt, all of the various people. But we actually need to be looking at all of them on a 360 model, right? As we need to be looking at each and every single player in this fight and what their motivation is and what they get out of it. Because this is the thing about wars, right?
But I also have to say that this is not a war that Israel asked for. And I think that's a major component of
Israel
this.
is at a constant state of war because they are surrounded completely on every side by enemy forces. They are in
whose avowed purpose is their utter destruction.
Annihilation.
Exactly.
No.
The only Jewish state in the world is surrounded on every side by people who want to destroy it. So they are in a constant state of war. But because they have been so distracted by their internal politics, they have not, and people have been talking, is this like a Pearl Harbor, right? They didn't see it coming. Was the intelligence there? And what we know now, is that maybe the intelligence was there. Maybe Netanyahu knew that this was coming, but because he was so focused on saving his own damn ass, he wasn't interested in making the right moves. And what that has done is it has weakened him.
I think also the focus on Iran. I think Israel has spent so much time focusing on Iran because it has been making these threats to say we are coming after you, and also this judicial overhaul politics internally within Israel. That was one thing that made us lose the plot was in terms of can you anticipate the Hamas attack. I mean, we didn't see it coming. We thought Iran might attack, or we didn't even. Iran was
And
the
the truth
most
of the
obvious.
matter is that nobody
yeah.
is going to come out on the other side of this
Mm.
looking good. Because on either side, there
Well,
have been so many atrocities
I want to talk
that
about
it has
this.
completely,
It's
for
yeah.
me, and I said to you last week, Gareth, is that I feel like this particular conflict
Mm.
in this moment in time in the world is debasing all of us, whether it is you're seeing people's heads being blown off on social media, right? Or you are Israel looking like you're attacking hospitals, or you are Hamas not allowing civilians out of conflict zones, or you are
Frankly,
Egypt not allowing,
opening the border because, of course,
or
they
you
don't
are
want
Egypt
them.
not allowing
Mm.
refugees into your country. Fuck. It's a shit show. And
Okay,
everybody,
sure. What
everybody comes out on the other side a loser.
I think that's right, but I'm also tired of moral equivocation and the idea that this is actually a both sides situation. You have people saying absolutely stupid things, like, for example, well, I'm against any deaths. Like, oh, so you're against bad things? I mean, like, that's a position.
But it's
You know what I mean?
war. People
You know what I mean,
die.
Kanthan? It's like it's so facile to say things like,
Gareth,
I'm
I
against
think-
all deaths.
Can
I mean,
all
some
of
people
us
are-
can all
I'm
of us
for all
agree?
deaths.
Can
I
all
mean,
of us
There's
agree?
no one's pro-death in this.
Can
war.
all of us agree that what Hamas did was an atrocity? And these guys, there needs to be a Nuremberg trial that's going to take these guys out.
absolutely.
I think all of
True.
us,
True.
you are not going to
And
find any person.
Furthermore, that they should hunt down these Hamas leaders. First thing that Biden
but-
should be
but-
doing,
but
if he
now we-
means what he says,
but
is he
that's
should
the
say to
Should
problem.
go to
Qatar,
Qatar right
hand
now.
these people over.
No, but that's the problem that we've got right now.
If I were
Okay,
Israel,
that hunting down these people, because this is not a war that's being fought in the way that Russia versus Ukraine, for example, is being fought. That war is being fought with boots on the ground. You have people wearing uniforms. You're able to tell the difference between civilians and combatants. And yes, you are
and terrorists.
and
I think combatants
and-
soft.
I'm talking Ukraine. Bafana.
Okay,
So, don't get so caught up in the terminology that you want to use the
We
word.
want to be clear.
No. So
Yeah.
between combatants and civilians in Ukraine, you can tell the difference immediately.
Mm.
Now, you can't do the same thing in Gaza because the guy is wearing a T-shirt and he looks like anyone else, and you have no way of actually finding that particular person and rooting it out.
Mm.
And so now when you have...
And they've Hamas has deliberately blurred those lines
Absolutely.
so that you don't know
Yes.
who's
So,
who.
so you're fighting guerrilla warfare.
Yes.
Now, at the point at which you're fighting guerrilla warfare, from the Israeli point of view, you have an implacable enemy who is committed to your destruction. It's part of what they've got in their founding articles.
Yes.
Say that
they
the
don't hide the
destruction of-
ball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is Israel supposed to do at the point at which you've got an enemy who is
Well,
committed to your destruction?
You've been asking for solutions. What
Yes.
should they do?
What
And
should
what,
they do?
what do
Because-
you see as the solution? Because you asked Bafana, but I mean,
Yes.
you must have some ideas.
Yeah, well, right now, the solution from Israel's point of view is to do exactly what they've always been doing, which is to basically mow the lawn. And
Strafe the places.
I'm
Are
saying,
you supporting the siege on Gaza? Is that the only solution?
look, I'm saying right now that if I were Israeli, that would be the foremost strategy in my mind. And remember that the fundamental thing, guys, about understanding how to win these battles is you have to put yourself in the position of the players on both sides and ask yourself, in the scenario, what would I be doing?
And what
Is
is optimal and what is your worst case scenario?
Yes, yeah. So does Israel have a choice other than
What they're doing.
what they are doing right now?
And the answer is?
And the answer for me is no.
Okay.
At the same time, do I think it's going to work? The answer to that, again, for me, is no.
Right. Because of the technological things that you were talking about.
It's because of
changing.
the technological things, and also because Israel just doesn't have enough boots on the ground.
Okay.
So they've got 300,000 people that they've now put together. They were about to march into Gaza to start a ground war.
True.
And suddenly Hezbollah assembles a couple of 100,000 people on the
South of
northern
Lebanon,
border.
yeah.
Yeah. So now what happens is that if you suddenly have Israel opening up a front on the Gaza Strip, you're now going to have a scenario where Hezbollah
Comes from
is
the
able
north.
to suddenly come through from the north. And they don't have the manpower to be able to fight on both fronts at once.
So, but what is the solution? You're not put us a solution yet.
I'm saying that the solution starts with a couple of things, and it goes back to the ancestral roots of this conflict, and actually not so much because of the fact that it's Jews versus
Arabs.
Versus Arabs. It's got everything to do with the fact that the reason why Iran is so implacably in favor of the destruction of Israel is because of the fact that the United States has for the longest time been in favor of the implacable destruction of Iran. Let's be very clear
but
let me finish this point, okay?
Yes, yes.
Because it goes back to this thing about understanding the mindsets of the various players that are involved.
Right.
Okay, Iran has been regime changed by the US up until in the late mid-50s. The mid-50s, Gareth, firstly. Iran was a secular democracy.
Yeah, but they got rid of the Shah in the 70s.
No, hang on a second. Don't get confused. Okay, we're going back to the 50s. So the US first did a regime change in the 1950s. They then again did a regime change and put the Shah back in power in the 1970s. And ever since the Ayatollahs came into power, you've had an Iran that's become more and more religiously fundamentalist and committed to the destruction of the United States, because the United States, for the longest time, has been doing everything in their power to actually undermine the state of Iran. And, you know, up until the Ukraine war, they were the most sanctioned country. Now, Iran, consider this. If you were in the position of Iran, here's what I would be thinking. Is Israel a proxy for the United States in this region?
To Iran, absolutely. It is.
Yes. And therefore, if I'm going to want to get back at the US, what is my point of entry? It has to be Israel. So now the solution that we need to be thinking of seriously comes down to the fact that we now have BRICS actually coming to the forefront. Okay. And in order for Iran to continue being a part of that club, and it is a club right now. Crucially, BRICS is not a military alliance. Okay, it's just an agreement to play by particular rules. But what we have seen is that China's role in particular has been to try and say, look, can we agree on cessation of hostilities under particular rules? And they've been able to do this between the Saudis and Iran. You're asking me for a solution, and I'm saying that I'm not saying it's a solution you're going to like. Okay, but I am saying right now, the only part that I am seeing to this, there has to be a withdrawal of US support
for Israel.
And right now,
but it's impossible.
Then you condemn Israel.
It's impossible.
You don't.
You don't. And I'll tell you why you don't. Because at the point at which you have that formal withdrawal of US support and you allow Russia and China very specifically to become honest brokers within that region. So remember, up until now, Russia has installed S-400 missile defense systems in Syria.
Which I got from...
No, so these are Russia's S-400 missile defense systems. But Russia does not allow the S-400 missile defense systems to be used against incoming Israeli aircraft. Now, did you guys ever stop to ask why this is the case?
Why?
It's because of the fact that Putin has a very good relationship with Israel.
With Netanyahu.
Not only with Netanyahu. Okay, so remember at the time that the Ukraine war broke up.
Yes.
Who was the person who was the first go-between? It was Bennett. Okay, because Bennett first went to Turkey. He had a meeting with the Ukrainians, and then he went to Russia, and he brokered what became that first peace agreement, which Boris Johnson then scuppered. So I'm saying
I'd like to differ on the view that, which is I think is the view that I've seen even the first march that happened in South Africa. It went to the American embassy, and I said it can't be that we are going to reduce this to a mere proxy between the Americans and Iranians. Because in the 1950s, you mentioned the 1950s, but in the 1948 or 47, actually, when the UN was established and there was a partition plan, all Arab states did not recognize Israel to be established. I mean, all. in 48, almost 7 or Arab states attacked Israel. This was even before there was.
No, but we know
no.
all this, and
Yes,
none
no,
of this is
I'm trying. No, I'm trying. I'm
Let him
trying to
finish.
show you that
But
the issue.
we've
No,
said,
no.
We've said
No,
all of this,
no.
and we've got
Chief,
like 10 minutes.
You've been
left.
speaking.
but
You've been
let him
speaking.
finish.
Allow me to finish up.
Yeah.
So
Take us forward.
yes, I'm taking you forward.
Yeah.
I'm trying to correct this idea that America is a problem here. Actually, meanwhile, America is the party that keeps Israel alive. Because without America, probably the Arab world could have actually succeeded by literally pushing the Jews to the sea as they have claimed from river to the sea.
Can I ask a question?
What I'm saying is,
Can I ask a
the
question?
issue
Before
here,
you ask your question,
Chief,
The
if we answer-
1967
no,
war.
Chief, I gave you a time to talk. Allow me.
No, go Bafana.
Thank you.
Go.
So I think that the reality here, it is that we are dealing with Arab against Jews, and that is being led by Iran.
Iran's
And
not an Arab country, by the way.
It's a patient, yes, but I gotta say Muslim extremist, if that's the word to use.
Shia,
right.
you could even say there's that Shia
Shia.
Sunni
Yeah,
element
Shia
to it,
Sunni.
sure.
So let me
So-
ask.
Very
let me
but
ask
as
my
as
question.
Phumi said, it's so complicated.
Yes.
Phumi, yeah, you
So
take.
I'm not saying the issue here.
Let me ask my question.
Americans, I think you are right when you say there's a death to Israel, death to America slogan
No, I've
in the Middle
just
East.
answered this one
But
question.
then
Okay, well,
Israel,
1967.
What is this question?
Okay,
Very
1967.
sure,
Okay, the 1967, the Six-Day War.
yes.
What role did America play in the Six-Day War?
I mean, Israelis attacked first. They were very, very much
I
independent.
know what
There was
my
no
question?
American
What-
influence there.
No, what was my question?
Israel
what,
took it.
What role
They
did
didn't play
America?
any role at that point.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, Israel very successfully defended themselves, and
Yes.
not only that. You remember the USS Liberty?
Yes.
The ship.
Yeah,
The ship,
yeah,
yes.
the USS Liberty.
Yes.
Okay, American naval carrier. What happened to it?
I don't
I
remember.
don't know.
It was taken out by Israel. Okay, because the Americans sent carriers to the Middle East, but they did not intervene on the part of Israel.
Okay.
They refused to intervene. And I'm saying right now that the fuck up that we've got in Israel at this moment is because of the fact that the US took 300,000 rounds of ammunition from Israel and shipped it off to Ukraine. And those 300,000 rounds of ammunition had been placed in Israel precisely to avoid a scenario that you've got right now, where if there's going to be an invasion, that the Israelis are not able to defend themselves.
but Ganthan,
so this idea that the US
I think-
is going to save
I
anyone.
don't think it's ideal to actually try to say the whole issue here it's US. I think we need to
I am saying
accept
exactly
that.
No,
All right, but
I'm
Kanthan,
saying
I mean,
exactly that.
logically,
Yes,
and
logically.
sensibly here, if power abhors a vacuum, if America, who is in your own opinion the major player on the one side, and Iran, who's the major player on the other, and you're saying China or Russia could be an honest broker here, you remove the one side's kind of big player, then the other side is going to take complete advantage of that. And you think Israel, who you've already told us don't have enough boots on the ground, will be able to survive the onslaught from north and south, and with Iran backing it?
So
It'll be the end.
So here's something that I've said on the show before, okay, that if Trump had still been sitting in office, this shit would not have happened.
No, of course
Okay,
not.
I'm very
No.
clear about this. And I'm also very clear about the fact that if Trump had been in office at this point right now, Americans would already have had boots on the ground, and they would be doing door-to-door reconnaissance throughout Gaza at the moment. They would be pulling out every single person. They would be hauling all of them off to Guantanamo Bay for interrogation, all 2 million of them. And they would go very specifically
Including the million
through
children.
that process. Okay, but what you've got right now in the United States, okay, is you've got this doddering senile fuckwit, okay, who is not able to answer questions at a press conference, is firmly committed to the anti-Israel factions, I should say, within
Yes.
his own political
Yes.
party.
And there are a lot of those, and that's very
and
concerning.
I'm saying right now, okay, and understand that I want Israel to survive this. This is the most crucial thing from my perspective.
But you're saying
But-
these
but-
things,
And
which
I'm
No,
saying,
seems
but
unlikely
you
based on what you
No,
said.
I don't think you want Israel to
Insanity-
survive by
insanity-
removing America from the equation.
insanity
I
is
read
doing
your
the
column.
same thing. Insanity is
I
doing
read
the
your
same
column.
thing.
But
Yes.
Kanthan, you
And
can't say you
expecting a
want
different
Israel to
result.
survive
All
by
right,
removing
let me ask
the
Phumi.
Americans in the equation.
me-
It's I mean, you're
Bafana.
very okay.
You know,
Bafana and
until we
Kanthan.
understand
Hold on,
this, we're
guys.
not
I want to
gonna
ask
fix
Phumi,
it.
how close are we to World War III, and how can it be prevented? Because all of this if it boils out of control, Pums,
Very close.
this is very dangerous. And
Mm.
everybody who says here in South Africa, oh, this is not our problem, it's something that's happening far away. Not true.
Not true. It's
This
very near.
involves everyone on
If
earth.
you are worried about the price of eggs today, imagine what happens when a world war breaks out. No,
Right,
because we are very close. We are very close to a world war. Because I do also think that one thing we haven't spoken a lot about in this show now is the shifting sands in that Middle East. You know, when you think about Kanthan said the children of Abraham, the Abraham Accords, it's not coincidence that this war breaks out literally a week after the UAE is signing a normalization agreement with Israel, which again, for Iran, they feel even more isolated, and it creates for them a need to do something very quickly. And they have destabilized the entire environment now. But we're very close to
I mean,
World
there
War
was hope with the Abraham Accords. I won't lie to you. There was peace coming to the
That was-
Middle East.
Let's just
And-
give credit where it's due. I think that's a very good point, Bafana. Like, is Jared Kushner not one of the best diplomats of the last 50 years?
He was. In my book, he was. I mean,
I agree
if-
wholeheartedly.
I agree on that. I think with the Abraham Accords coming in, seeing more normalization with most Arab states, you look at countries like former Bahrain coming into Israel. I'm like, wow, okay. You know, right now the Saudis were just about to jump in this. This could have been a very good deal for Israel. And this could have been the Arab League as well. I think if they can unite and say, guys, let's broker a peace deal for our brothers that side. Let's try to work something around this. This could actually
You're exactly
produce
right.
peace.
And the
But
Abraham
then-
Accords were the most brilliant piece of diplomacy that we've seen in more than half a century.
Yes.
And what's also very clear is that at the point at which Biden came into office, the first thing he did was to say that MBS is a terrorist and must be taken out and brought to trial.
What a stupid thing to do.
And what did he do? He drove
Over what,
the Saudis-
Khashoggi or something, right?
Yeah, over Khashoggi. So he drove the Saudis into partnership now with
Iran.
with Iran. And this is why I keep coming back to the fact, people are saying in the comments, I want Israel to fight with one hand behind its back. No, I'm saying that Israel cannot count on the US.
True.
And,
I mean,
and I'm saying that Israel has
I
to
think
find other
no
people
one can
who
count
are
on the
willing.
US.
no one can count on the
No,
US,
well,
but
exactly.
at
If anything,
least
that's exactly right.
That's
We've,
exactly
No
right.
one
we've
can
seen
count
in
on
the
the
last
US.
little while, if you were in Afghanistan,
Afghanistan.
trying to hang on to those planes as they were flying out of Bagram,
Yes.
you can imagine how being an ally with the US is no longer a guarantee of anything.
True, but then for Israel, uncertainly, the US has been that friend that will say, "I'll come to you at any cost. I will come and defend you
But
at
they
any
haven't.
cost." Right?
But they
No, but even with this conflict, they already moved quite very, very fast to actually come to defense of Israel.
All right.
So I think that Israel and US must stick together, even though you can't rely on them totally. But I believe right now at this point, this is the only partner or superpower that we can maybe rely on for a while, but obviously not for a long run.
Well, maybe Kanthan's point about how the US isn't Israel's next best hope is something they're considering. They probably are. There are a lot of smart people who are looking at all the options now. How do we avoid World War III? Somebody here, you all have a chance. Go ahead. Anybody? Phumi? Kanthan?
Not by Naledi
Bafana?
Pandor.
Any ideas?
Look,
Okay.
the only way we avoid World War III is if Iran and Hezbollah do not directly intervene in this conflict. If they do intervene in the conflict, we've got World War III. Because at that point, just because of the sheer force of numbers, Israel has no choice but to use nukes. Simple.
Okay.
Simple.
For me, maybe I'm more of a Mandela, but I believe that if the Palestinians, the Israelis, and the Iran and whoever can actually try to broker a deal, that would be the deal of the century, maybe for the Middle East. Maybe that can work. If Abraham Accords almost worked, maybe we can look at a better deal, another deal that can actually work. But I don't think that going into
Well, if
war.
Trump
I
wins
think
the
the
election
only way
next
we
year,
avoid a World War III
Mhm.
is if Israel pulls a Munich and goes into Qatar and cuts the head of the snake with Hamas, because the only reason that Hezbollah has been emboldened is by watching the chaos that has unfolded in Gaza.
It's true. I actually support that as well. Let's rather go and get Hamas out, hunt Hamas, finish them off. But then, would they be the last one? Because there's also Palestinian Islamic Jihad. There is also Hezbollah in the north border, and they keep on popping up all these groups. So
Israel
we are dealing
Israel
with.
has always had a stance that is a heavy stance that says, as long as the other side understands that 9 of theirs for every 1 of ours is the only the way that we're going to keep ourselves safe. This is Israel's stance. And I think this is
the biggest US military base in the Middle East is in Qatar, guys.
So
that tells you how much of a friend they are.
All right, the good point. I want to hold everything for just a second and bring it to South Africa. We've also got our cameras just froze because there's so much fractious energy in the room that Ryan has to now reset the cameras or something. So
he can't squeeze himself past
Kanthan in all of his regalia. Okay, so quickly to bring it home.
Sure.
What about our involvement? What about South Africa? What about what our president has said? What about what Naledi Pandor has said? Bafana, you go first.
Sure. I think that South Africa is pushing this in a very wrong way, on the fact that they are trying to somehow compare this to the apartheid regime of South Africa back in the day. I think it's very far-fetched. I think this war with its history, what we have discussed here for the past 45 minutes, is nothing compared to what South Africa went through during the apartheid regime and the freedom fighters of Tambo and Chris Hani. And also, I feel like the ANC is imposing their...
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are we still there?
Yeah.
Yes. I feel like the ANC is imposing their stance, which is purely ideological, purely friendship based on the struggle back in the 80s or 70s when they met with the PLO in Moscow. But this has nothing to do with the apartheid history. South Africa is slowly making themselves look what's the word to use? They can't be relied upon to broker peace between the Palestinians and the Israelis because already they have chosen a side. And to have Naledi Pandor calling a terrorist organization in that manner, that was very appalling. We need to make sure that we remove the apartheid label on Israel. I think our history is very unique to our people, and our history here was basically based on black and white. Meanwhile, on Israelis is very much different. It's about the Jewish state existing in the Middle East and the Arab neighbors, even the Palestinians rejecting that to recognize that there is a Jewish state and it will exist.
All right, Kanthan, you've spoken about how you think Naledi Pandor should at least be talking.
I'm saying
to
that
Hamas, they're the people to address.
I'm saying that everyone should be talking to Hamas, and that's not to say
you're not saying cut their heads off like Phumi.
No. I'm saying that the fundamental role, if you want to be a broker, is you need to be able to have channels of communication to both sides.
Cyril,
no. So hang on a second. So
Kanthan,
What
I'm saying is, if you are saying that, right? Already in Israeli terms, Hamas is not a partner to peace; is a terrorist. How do you position yourself by actually calling a Hamas terrorist as a minister of DECO? Are you not publicly or just you declaring war on Israel as well as a partner of Hamas?
This is too much along the lines of if you're not with us, then you're against us.
No,
guys,
I think South Africa.
And this is why. This is exactly why we've never been able to have resolution to this. The first thing in terms of resolving any conflict is you need to have open channels to both sides. And open channels doesn't mean that you are supporting either side.
Or that you're giving them
but open channels means that you have the ability at any given stage to pick up the phone and say, here's what I'm
saying is
South
she didn't call Netanyahu.
She
didn't even call the ambassador.
Can I just say?
Yes.
South Africa has completely lost for a very long time. The
Yes.
moral
You asked me.
grounds.
You asked me what I
That's
think we.
fine.
You asked me what I think we should be doing, and then you immediately pile on me.
No one is
I'm not
piling
piling on you,
and
guys.
I'm
We
saying,
have listened to you tell us what you think
Yes.
should be happening for a good part of this show.
All right.
All I'm saying
He took the
is
show.
that
Fight at
no, no,
Kobane. Go
all
for
I
it.
am saying
Yes.
is that South Africa, unfortunately, does not have the moral standing in
True.
this fight.
It does not. Agreed.
Secondly,
Mhm.
South Africa has a whole lot of its own shit to deal with.
Mm.
And that's what they should be concentrating on. But this is a great distraction for everybody from their failings. The ANC is using this to distract us all from their own failings as a government in this country.
The distraction's entirely
Spot
a media
on.
narrative.
I think
but the distraction
you knocked it out.
The distraction in this case
Absolutely.
is a media
Yes.
narrative. But guys, let's be very clear. Okay, South Africa is not going to be the broker of peace here.
No,
Okay, but
They will
BRICS,
never.
but BRICS could.
but BRICS could. And right now, BRICS is the only player in the world that could actually be brokering any sort of peace out there.
But what I'm saying to you,
And I'm very happy for
on
you
the
to say
on the
that it's
issue
not
of
gonna work.
channels, right?
Yeah.
I'm saying
Yeah.
if Naledi could have said, I'm calling your terrorist or Hamas as you want to justify that, but also then call Netanyahu or maybe calling the ambassador here in Pretoria to her office.
that would be nice.
That would
Instead
be
of
more
saying we
nice.
should shut down
Yes.
the embassy.
Rather than you say boycott Israel, boycott Israeli products. Now, Lady is becoming an activist for Palestine using the seat of the Minister of Deco. She is not in any way playing a diplomatic role.
And in
Listen,
exactly the same way.
on Russia and Ukraine,
in
in Russia and
the same
Ukraine,
way,
we were non-aligned as we claimed, right?
Yeah, we said so.
We said so. And this is the
and
part
she-
where
and
we
she
have
said the
to.
same in terms of her statement around this.
She's very clear, lady. We need to boycott Israel. It's an oppressive regime. All the
always
words.
been
She's
clear
always
about
been
that
clear
stance.
on how she hates Israel, right?
Mhm.
So you cannot then claim that what the call to Hamas was somehow opening channels. No, it's a very clear call of solidarity with the people they've been supporting for all these years. It has nothing to do with diplomacy. Because if it is about diplomacy, he could have called the Israeli side.
Stop with Israel-Palestine for a second. Phumi said something just now.
Yes.
It's a distraction. You said it's a media narrative, which I think you're both on the money here. But what are they distracting us from, Phumi? That's the important question.
That they
because
have
that's the
completely
thing.
failed us.
That's the thing that's going to affect all of us. Most importantly, in the next couple of months, we've got an election coming up.
Yes.
Everybody's talking about it, even though we don't know. It might be sometime in May.
Not really sure, yeah.
And people in this country talk about distractions. We're even distracted by gossip. It doesn't take a lot to distract South Africans. Perhaps the scariest realization I've had in the last 2 weeks
Yes.
is that despite my own very strong feelings on this situation, and clearly you guys are full of strong feelings about this too, which I love, but my God, there are a lot of people who just don't care. There are a lot of young people in the world who are completely apathetic to all of this.
Sure. True.
What is that? Because that is, to me, the big elephant in the room that no one seems to be talking about. You ask young people, I'm talking old, young, white, black, rich, poor. I'm talking about all kinds. Ask them about this. Very, very, very superficial answers, if any. And most are too terrified to say anything in case they are seen to be on one side and the person asking the question is on the other.
I think for what I've seen for a couple of years, some of us were introduced to this conflict because we are politically activists and we are members of the ANC. We had the scarf like Kanthan here, right? But then in terms of the local underground people, they don't even care. To most Christians, it's more about, this is our holy land. Jesus is from there. The Bible is from there. We stand with Israel without any historical facts or what's happening on the ground. Also, there is a view that ANC then tends to what? Tends to impose this idea. And it's very easy to say, just like South Africans during apartheid, so we must support Palestine.
It's victim.
Yes. Because we know apartheid, because they say apartheid Israel, automatically you feel aligned to the struggle. But when you realize the history behind all of this conflict, there is no way that we can be compared to what is happening in the Middle East. So, yes, young people are apathetic to what's happening in the Middle East. Not even they have a clue who's Hamas, who don't even have a clue who's Netanyahu, but all they hear, it's just like South Africans during apartheid.
Yeah,
we must support this.
That word,
and that is
agree with
wrong, and it's misleading, and it's malicious.
And it's not going to help us solve the
And
problem.
it's not going to help
Even if
us
you
solve
say
the
it's-
problem. No,
even
but
if you say it's wrong, it's malicious. Agreed. It doesn't help us solve the problem.
Okay, so last thoughts, because you've all been shouting at each other for the last, well, not you, Phumi, I'll tell you, I accept you, but I like that Bafana and Kanthan have been shouting at each other. And a lot of what you've been saying is stuff that people either have been thinking themselves, or in the case of the technology argument that you made earlier and the way that warfare has changed, I think this is very valid and useful information for people to input into their models in their heads, because otherwise we're not going to move forward. And these are realities that are starting to dawn on people too. I mean, the idea that you could paraglide in to an area where people at a music concert and then immediately mow them down with machine guns. This is as revolutionary as flying planes into the World Trade Center in some ways. And this was Israel's 9/11, if we're going to make comparisons like Munich about taking
and in terms of per capita deaths, it's
the biggest since the Holocaust,
and it's significantly worse than 9/11 at a number of levels.
Absolutely. All right, so last word. I'm going to go Phumi first, and then
I want to go last.
You want to go last?
Fighter.
Why are you two associating her with Busisiwe Mkhwebane? This is very unfair. Just because she's a black woman? What is this?
Because I'm black?
All right.
No, you go ahead for me.
Bafana, you can start. You can start. Just your overall thoughts. You got like a minute or two. We've already gone over time, but this is important.
I think, Gareth, if you want to broker peace, I'm going to go back to the idea that engage with partners, possible partners towards delivering that peace. Secondly, South Africa must just remove our history from this. It's not helping anyone. It's just fueling the fire across the world and is actually demonizing Jews. And we have seen a high rise of anti-Semitism as a result of people actually trying to use the apartheid energy to say, okay, Jews are evil.
Well, we had people at the Sydney Opera House, forgive my interruption, shouting gas the Jews.
My point exactly. People saying Hitler should have finished them all. So when you hear all of these things, people are using the apartheid to say the apartheid regime, they are oppressors, whatever, all this catchy words. But the truth of the matter is that until we deal with this war, honestly, full appreciation of its history, then we can find peace. But as long as we are pushing propaganda machinery on both sides, we are only going to fuel fire. And that fire, sadly, it puts the Jewish community at all the time on the stance of you are evil, Satanist, all these anti-Semitic things that you have heard, even from the Palestinian leaders that are actually indoctrinating their children to say these are evil people, they drink blood. So I'm saying peace must be realized. Ehud Olmert tried in 2008. He gave the Palestinians all their land that they wanted. He gave them 95% of the West Bank and Gaza, and they said no to that. So let the Palestinians at this time, with the Arab world, unite and propose a peace deal that will work. But Israel must stand, will stand.
Okay, Kanthan?
Consider the fact right now that you have ISIS on the one hand and you have Hamas on the other hand. And I tell people that, they're not cut from the same cloth, but they sing from the same hymn sheet. And the reason why I think that Russia is the only player that militarily is capable of being an honest broker here is because Russia has been committed to the eradication of ISIS. And they've actually been doing so on the ground in Syria and in other parts.
But Joe Biden's been telling us for the last 3 years that Russia's the most evil superpower that's ever existed.
Until we have this shift that goes away from kowtowing to the Americans and talking about American exceptionalism, realizing that there's a shift in power that's taking place around the world. Understand right now that Iran has hypersonic missiles that are capable of flattening Tel Aviv. Let's be very clear about that.
But then can you really trust Russia? Meanwhile, it has obviously declared support for Palestine cause.
The question of whether or not you can trust Russia is not the point. We've already established that we can't trust the United States. We then have to look at...
But
no, wait.
Yes.
This is... Okay. We've already established that you can't trust the United States.
Yes.
When you look in terms of who has, firstly, the capacity, fundamentally, to be able to broker, just simply based on the fact that they have the experience, the technological capability to do so, and that they are a relatively disinterested party. And that's why I'm saying that the only people that you can actually rely on to be honest brokers between all sides.
Curveball, the Russians.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
For me, last word, and I've got we've got to hurry this, so you've got it. You're the boss.
I can't believe that in 2023 we still have to use the slogan we grew up with in the 90s that says peace in the Middle East.
Yeah. On that note, we draw it to a close this morning. A nice fiery burning platform. It's not called that for no reason. Thanks, everybody. We will see you tomorrow at 6 a.m. bright and early. Thank you, Kanthan, Phumi. Thank you, Bafana.